Hi, everyone. You're here because, like us, you want to cut through the hype and really understand how advanced AI is being used today.
Exactly.
So today we're diving straight into a specific AI agent. It's called Order Genie,
Right.
and it's designed to, well, manage customer orders, all the complexities involved, think less chaos, more clarity.
Yeah, businesses get absolutely swamped with order questions, status updates, returns, where is my stuff? It's a lot.
Uh-huh.
So Order Genie is trying to make that whole process much smoother. We've looked at a pretty detailed guide and also a Jupyter Notebook implementation from GitHub.
Yeah, we dug into both. So our mission for this deep dive is pretty clear.
Mm.
We want to understand the core intelligence, the key capabilities that make Order Genie work specifically for order management.
Without getting totally bogged down in the super technical weeds.
Exactly. By the end, you should have a good grasp of the kind of fundamental power behind this type of AI.
And what's really interesting is just how many sophisticated AI capabilities are being juggled here. Let's start with one. Structured output.
Okay, structured output.
Yeah. So when Order Genie interacts, say, with you or maybe an internal system, it's not just generating free-flowing text. It's designed to perform specific, predefined actions.
Like database queries.
Precisely,
Yeah.
using very clear, defined interfaces.
Mm.
This makes things much clearer, more predictable for the user,
Mm.
especially if they're asking for something specific like order details.
Okay, let me see if I get this. So instead of me asking, where's my order, and getting back a paragraph that might have the answer buried in it,
Or might not have.
or might not, structured output means the AI gives back like organized information every time. Maybe a little summary of my order.
Exactly that. It turns the AI interaction into a more reliable data pipeline. Think about the time saved, the errors avoided.
Yeah.
Huge. And this structured approach, it ties in really closely with something called function calling.
Function calling. Okay.
Order Genie uses these specially decorated Python functions. Think of them like specific tools in its toolkit
Tools for what?
to interact directly with a SQL database. These tools let it do things like list all the data tables available,
Okay.
describe the exact structure, the schema of a particular table.
Ah, so it knows what's in the tables.
Yep. And even execute specific SQL queries to pull out exactly the data it needs.
So the AI isn't just guessing, it's actively going into the database using these specific functions like keys to get the facts.
Precisely. It's methodical. The guide actually highlights three key functions.
Mm-hmm.
Listables, describable, which takes a table name,
Right.
and execute a query, which takes the actual SQL command.
Can you walk us through maybe what each one does, like in practice?
Sure. So listables is like the AI asking, okay, what information sources do I have access to? It gets a list of all the database tables.
Like an inventory check.
Exactly. Then describable lets it zoom in. If it needs info from, say, the order minimum fulfillment record table, it uses this function to understand its blueprint.
Like what columns are in there? Email it, order it, stuff like that.
Precisely. It figures out what kind of information each column holds. And finally, execute a query is the action part. It uses SQL commands to ask specific questions, like find the order status for this email lead.
And this is all happening with a connection to a specific database. The notes mention sample.db.
Yeah, in this example, it's a SQLite database called sample.db. That's where the order data lives.
It really is like giving the AI a set of very specific tools for a very specific job. Getting data accurately. Okay, what's the next key capability here?
Well, another vital piece is control generation.
Control generation. Sounds important.
It is. It basically means Order Genie is trained, or maybe instructed, to stay laser-focused on order-related topics.
So I won't suddenly start talking about the weather if I ask about a return.
Exactly. It avoids going off on tangents. You won't find it offering, I don't know, recipes when you're trying to track a package. It keeps the interaction professional and efficient.
That seems absolutely crucial for customer service. You need the AI to stick to the script, more or less.
Right.
The source material also keeps calling Order Genie an agent. What does that term mean in this AI context?
Agent implies a degree of autonomy. Order Genie isn't just passively responding. It can manage the conversation flow and decide which tasks, like which function calls, need to happen next.
So it takes initiative.
In a way, yes. It can sequence actions without needing explicit step-by-step commands from a human for every single thing. It's designed to be more self-sufficient for routine tasks.
Okay, so less like a simple chatbot, more like a proactive assistant managing the process. That sounds like it could really speed things up.
Definitely.
Another term that came up was few-shot prompting. What's that about?
Few-shot prompting.
Yeah.
It's a pretty clever technique. You basically give the AI just a few examples of typical interactions right inside its initial instructions.
Like mini examples.
Exactly. Maybe an example of someone asking for an order status
Mm-hmm.
and how the AI should respond, perhaps by asking for an email. These examples act like quick training guides. They show Order Genie the expected pattern of conversation for common requests.
So even if it hasn't seen tons of data, these few examples give it a strong hint on how to behave.
Precisely. It helps it generalize and respond appropriately in similar situations. It's like giving it a little cheat sheet for common scenarios.
Like planting seeds of expected behavior. The guide even showed example dialogues, right? User asks about order, AI asks for email.
Yes, those dialogues serve as templates within the instructions.
Got it. Okay, that leads nicely into the next concept, which sounds really important, grounding.
Oh, grounding is critical, absolutely essential, especially when you're dealing with factual data like orders.
So what does it mean for an AI to be grounded?
It means the AI is engineered to base its answers strictly on factual information pulled from a reliable source, in this case, the database.
So no making things up.
No making things up. It has to verify the information before presenting it to the user.
Hmm.
This is all about building trust and, obviously, minimizing errors.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. How does Order Genie actually do that? How does it ensure it's grounded?
Well, the guide points out a couple of key steps. First, it always confirms the existence and the structure, the schema of the database tables it needs to use.
Using those functions we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
List tables and describable?
Exactly. It checks the blueprint first. Second, specifically when dealing with queries based on email, it verifies that the email log column actually exists in the relevant table and that it's using that column correctly.
So it's double checking its tools and its data path before acting.
Yes, those database functions are fundamental to grounding. They let Order Genie directly check the facts in the database, not just assume things.
That sounds like a really robust way to keep the AI honest, so to speak, accountable to the data.
It has to be.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. We've talked about what Order Genie does, its capabilities. How about the how? How is it actually put together? The sources mention Langgraph quite a bit.
Langgraph, yes. Langgraph is a framework from the LangChain ecosystem designed specifically for building these more complex stateful AI applications.
Stateful, meaning it remembers the conversation.
Exactly. It helps structure the application as a kind of graph.
Hmm.
Think of it like a sophisticated flowchart that defines how the conversation should flow, when to use tools, when to wait for input, and so on.
So it's the scaffolding for the whole interaction, managing the back and forth and the tool use.
That's a great way to put it. It maps out all the potential paths the conversation might take.
The notebook also mentioned, the practical stuff, installing certain Python packages. What are the key libraries needed here?
Right. There's always some environment setup.
Yeah.
The notebook specifically calls out installing LangGraph itself, of course, plus things like LangChain Google Gemini for interacting with Google's models and Google Gemini.
Okay.
And it also, interestingly, mentions uninstalling some potentially conflicting packages first, just to ensure everything plays nicely together.
Standard developer practice, making sure the toolkit is clean. What about the data side? We know it uses that sample.db Squilite database. How's that set up?
Yeah, the notebook shows the initialization. It creates two main tables, order ready to fulfill record and order tracking.
Okay.
And the create table commands define all the columns, order id, email id, product SKU, tracking URL, all the necessary fields to store the order information.
So you need that database structure ready and presumably filled with data before Order Genie can even start working.
Absolutely. The AI needs data to work with.
You mentioned Langgraph helps manage the state, the conversation history. How does it technically keep track of everything?
It uses state management. In this Order Genie example, they define something called Order Genie state. It's a typedict in Python.
Like a container.
Exactly, like a digital clipboard for the current conversation. It holds the message history, maybe specific details about the order being discussed, and even a flag to signal that the task is complete. Langgraph updates this state as the conversation progresses.
So it's the central memory hub for each interaction.
Okay.
The notebook also talked about a system instruction, Order Genie sent. Sounds important.
Oh, it's fundamental. The system instruction is where you define the AI's core personality, its rules, its goals.
Like it's programming.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
It tells Order Genie how to behave. It includes guidelines on using those database tools, sets the conversational tone, dictates what topics are allowed.
And those few shot examples we discussed, are they in there too?
Yes. The few-shot prompting examples are typically embedded right within the system instruction. It's the agent's foundational operating manual,
He's
really.
got it. It's the rule book and the basic training manual rolled into one. Now, the Langgraph application described in the notebook uses chatbot and human nodes. What do those represent?
They represent the turns in the conversation. The chatbot node is the AI agent itself, the part generating responses and deciding to use tools.
And the human node.
That simulates the user you typing in your request or asking your question. The conversation essentially bounces between these nodes within the Langgraph structure.
So it's modeling the interaction flow. How does Langgraph decide where to go next? From human to chatbot, maybe to a tool, then back.
That's handled by conditional edges. These are like decision points in the graph. For
Okay.
instance, there's a function mentioned, maybe root tools. After the chatbot node generates a response, this function checks. Did the AI decide it needs to use a tool? Like, did it output a tool call?
Ah,
If yes, the edge directs the flow to the tool node. If no, it might go back to the human node to wait for the next user input.
and there's another one, maybe X a human node.
Right, that checks if the user wants to end the chat. It's all about dynamically routing the conversation based on what's happening.
Very flexible. And the tool node itself, that's where the database functions actually get executed. Listables, execute scory.
Exactly. The tool node is the bridge. When the AI decides via a tool call that it needs, say, execute query, the flow goes to the tool node, which runs that specific function with the required SQL.
And then the result.
The result from the tool the data retrieved from the database gets fed back into the graph, usually back to the chatbot node.
So the chatbot can then use that fresh information to formulate its final response to the user.
Precisely. Identify need, gate route to tool, execute tool, get data, formulate response. That's the loop.
It's really coming together now. I can see how these pieces fit. But like any system, it must have limitations, right? What are the potential drawbacks mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. The sources are clear about this. Order Genie's success really hinges on that initial database setup being accurate and complete.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And also, the SQL operations it's allowed to perform need to cover the necessary ground. If a user asks something requiring a query it wasn't programmed for, it might get stuck.
Makes sense. Anything else?
Well, while it's great for routine stuff, really complex or unusual customer problems might still need a human to step in. It's not quite ready for every edge case imaginable.
So it's a powerful assistant, but maybe not a full replacement for human judgment in tricky situations. I remember trying to sort out a delivery issue once where the tracking was just weird. Needed a person.
Exactly. Those kinds of situations, human intervention is still sometimes necessary.
Okay, what about the future? Where could this technology go? Any potential enhancements mentioned?
Definitely. The guide suggests integrating more advanced natural language processing, NLP. That would help the AI understand a wider variety of user questions, even slang or slightly ambiguous phrasing.
Better understanding of nuance.
Right. And another big one is real-time database updates. Ensuring Order Genie always has the absolute latest information could make it even more efficient and reliable. Imagine tracking updates hitting instantly.
Yeah, better language skills and always current data. Those seem like huge potential upgrades. Okay, so as we wrap this up, what are the main takeaways for our listeners from this deep dive into Order Genie?
I think the key thing is seeing how multiple advanced AI capabilities work together. You've got structured output, function calling, control generation, the agent concept, few-shot prompting, grounding,
All orchestrated by Langgraph.
all orchestrated by Langgraph and powered by models like Gemini. It's this combination, this synergy that allows us to build these really quite sophisticated agents that can tackle complex real-world tasks like order management effectively.
And hopefully everyone listening now has a clear picture of those building blocks, the core ideas, without needing a computer science degree. It's about understanding the concepts behind the technology.
Absolutely. And maybe that leaves us with a final thought to chew on.
Go for it.
Considering what Order Genie can do, even now, how might AI agents like this fundamentally change customer service interactions in the future? And what does that mean for things like data privacy and how much we trust these AI systems?
That's definitely something to think about. How might these technologies apply elsewhere, too, beyond just orders? Lots to consider.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.